There's something strange about going back to these old cameras in 2026. Because they don't just bring back old footage, they bring back old versions of yourself. Wow, another Canon EOS M video, back-to-back Canon EOS M. Watch out, Zeke. In all seriousness though, after my last video, a comment from Ando Breslin 8735 genuinely made me question whether my conclusions about the EOS M had been a little hasty. One of the main things he mentioned was the QScale RAW and whether I'd actually spent enough time properly testing it. Now, if you don't know, QScale is basically a different way of compressing the raw footage in Magic Lantern. The lower the QScale value, the less compression you get, meaning theoretically you retain more image detail and quality while still keeping file sizes more manageable compared to completely uncompressed RAW. And that comment stayed in my head enough that I decided to give the camera one final proper test. I came back genuinely wanting the EOS M to prove me wrong. Because part of me thought maybe they were right. Because on paper, the Canon EOS M still sounds ridiculous in 2026. Tiny body, 14-bit RAW, Magic Lantern, QScale, anamorphic modes, cinema-style image quality from a camera that costs next to nothing. It sounds amazing, so I thought, right, one final proper test. I took the EOS M out alongside the Panasonic GH2, tested QScale properly, shot HD 40-bit RAW, tested the higher resolution anamorphic modes, and really tried to see whether this thing still makes sense in 2026. And honestly, the deeper I got into testing it, the more I started remembering why I slowly drifted away from shooting with it in the first place. So let's start with the HD 40-bit RAW mode, because in terms of stability, this seemed to be the best performing setup on the EOS M. And being a more standard HD mode, it also felt like a much fairer comparison against the Lumix GH2. Because technically speaking, yes, the QScale improves the image. Technically speaking, yes, 14-bit RAW gives you more flexibility. But the issue I kept running into was the actual resolution itself. To my eye, the HD RAW footage is just too soft. And I don't mean that cinematic softness with rich organic texture. I mean genuinely soft. Especially when you realize the actual recording resolution here is only around 1736 by 738. And honestly, you can see it. To me, it generally feels closer to upscale 720p than proper detailed HD footage. And once I realised that, something clicked for me, because no amount of QScale tweaking or transcoding or raw flexibility or export workflow optimization can completely overcome the fact that the actual detail level just isn't really there. The resolution itself becomes the bottleneck. And that was honestly quite disappointing, because I really wanted this setup to impress me. Now, to be fair to the EOS M, things did improve once I moved into the high resolution anamorphic modes. The 5K anamorphic footage definitely looks better. There's more texture, more detail, and the image starts feeling a bit more richer and more premium. But then another issue starts appearing: the unpredictability, camera freezes, and random instability. The constant feeling that you're pushing the camera right to the edge of what it can handle. 5K anamorphic, and it's completely frozen again. It was shooting absolutely fine. To this, and just completely froze, and now it's glitching and it's stuck. And this is where the experience starts becoming exhausting for me, because instead of focusing on composition, light, movement, storytelling, and emotion, I was thinking about write speeds, crop modes, QScales, transcoding, export settings, record stability, and whether the footage would even behave properly afterwards. And honestly, at some point it stops feeling like making a film or a video or a creative piece and starts feeling like troubleshooting. And this is where modern cameras really changed my perspective on the EOS M, because while I was testing all this, I kept thinking about the Lumix S9. The S9 shoots internal 6K, 10-bit modern codecs, reliable recording, no hacks, no weird workarounds, and no technical uncertainty. And it's still a tiny camera. In fact, on the used market now, you can realistically pick one up for only a few £100s more than some fully rigged out EOS M setup. And honestly, that completely changes the conversation in 2026, because suddenly the EOS M stops feeling like this unbeatable hidden cinema gem and starts feeling more like a technical experiment. Which brings me back to the GH2. Now obviously the GH2 has limitations too. It's old, 8-bit, low light is pretty poor, and technically the EOS M RAW files have advantages. But every single time I pick up the GH2 during this testing, I just enjoyed shooting more. The camera gets out of the way. You're not constantly stressing about hidden variables and technical settings. You just go out, look for interesting light, interesting moments and movement, and just shoot. That simplicity matters far more than people realize, because at the end of the day, the things that truly make a good image usually are QScale settings, raw bit depth or strange crop modes. It is composition, light, timing, storytelling, emotion, movement. And weirdly, the GH2 kept reminding me why I fell in love with making videos in the first place. Maybe that's why I still love these older cameras so much, because they remind me of a time when filmmaking felt a little less polished, a little less obsessed with specs, a little more experimental. Back when people were hacking GH2s, pushing all cameras way beyond what they were supposed to do, grading everything teal and orange, uploading grainy cinematic tests to YouTube at 2 AM in the morning, and just creating for the fun of it. Now before I finish, I just want to say a massive thank you to everybody that has subscribed recently. We have just passed 1,000 subscribers. Honestly, that's a huge milestone for me. So thank you to everybody that is taking the time to like my videos, comment on the videos, share the videos, and interact with me on this channel. And going forward, I really want to grow the content on this channel and really push forward more talks and videos on Micro Four Thirds, discussions on full frame, more experimental stuff with cameras and lenses, more cinematic shooting, and more real world camera testing, and more honest conversations like this. Because loads of people have asked, at some point in the future, I'll probably also make available some of the GH2 setups, including some of the P-Tool setups and hack firmware configurations that I've been using and testing over the years. Honestly, even in 2026, I still think these older cameras have something really special about them. Maybe that's the real reason I still keep coming back to cameras like the GH2. Not because they're perfect, not because they beat modern cameras technically, because sometimes they remind you why you started creating in the first place. Anyway, let me know what you think down below, and I'll see you in the next one.